coding agents like Claude Code, Cursor, Codex became really good in the last year. And not many people know how they work under the hood. Because of that, and making wrong assumptions, people might use coding agents incorrectly. For example, they can assume that coding agents is aware of the whole code base or of their architecture. In this video, I want to explain how coding agents actually work. So we will look at how they interact with tools, what tools are available, and how they actually read files, find files, etc. So you have better understanding of how they work and how to use them properly. So what to expect from them and what to not expect from them. When to double check their output and when you can completely trust them. So if you are interested, please continue watching. Okay, so under the hood of each coding agent is an LLM. So LLM stands for large language model, and you can think of it as some thing that can predict next token or next word in a sentence. You can see an example. If we had like the cat set on there, the LLM, the only thing it can do is predict the next word, or correctly say token, in the sentence. Now, when ChatGPT was released, people understood that the better way to treat LLMs and to train them and to fine-tune them is to make them look like a chatbot. So a chatbot is basically a sequence of messages: user message, assistant message, user message. So when you open ChatGPT or Claude, you write some message, which is user message because you are a user, and chatbot replies with the whole message, so it generates many tokens, many words, one after another, and this forms an assistant message. You can then ask a follow-up question or follow-up request. It will then reply with a new assistant message. So this is how LLMs work as chatbots. Now, in every chatbot, what is usually hidden from user is something called system prompt. So system prompt is some instructions that LLMs are trained to follow more strictly than user instructions. So for example, in system prompt, people add some safety instructions, or if you saw some prompt examples in the internet, like your software developer, do this and do that, it usually goes into system prompt. And for example, in ChatGPT or Claude, you can't change system prompt. But if you're developing an agent, you usually have access to system prompt if you use like LLMs via API. So this system prompt exists, and it also exists in our coding agents we're talking about. That's why it's important to understand that it is there. And we will actually look at actual system prompt in Claude Code later in this video. Now, all these messages, including system prompt, user messages, and assistant messages, they form context of 200,000 tokens in case of Claude Code. In case of GPT models, it can be bigger sometimes. But in general, this is all what goes into context, and this context is usually limited by the API provider. Now, what is an agent? What is Claude Code, for example? Claude Code is chatbot as well, because you can ask some questions, you can ask requests, and you can ask follow-ups. So you can ask, what can you do? You can see that it replied with some message. This is assistant message. And we can now ask some follow-up questions here if we want to. And you can see now there is a second assistant message. Now, you know that if you use coding agents, they interact with your code base. So they can read files, they can write files, etc. So how this actually works? Because LLM, the only thing it can do is generate next word or next token. It can't directly have access to your files. And in order to interact with your files, it is using a thing called tools. So assistant, LLM can predict to use tool instead of just text message. So tool is kind of a function that a user then have to call and respond to the LLM with the output of this tool. So in our example, assistant can decide call tool read file with parameter path, and then it is expecting kind of user to execute this tool and to read the file for it and return the output to an LLM. The thing is, when you use Claude Code, you don't do this manually, right? It doesn't ask you to read the file. It does it for you. So this logic is inside the Claude Code, inside the wrapper, inside the agent. And this is when agents are really useful because they actually implement all these tools for you. Now, going back to our Claude Code, you can ask what tools are available to it and just learn what it can do based on it. What tools are available to you? You can see that it has access to some file preparation tools. This is what you usually see when you interact with Claude Code. So read file, write file, edit file. So some tools are used for searching files. It also has, for example, bash tool, so it can execute commands in command line for you. It also has, I think, also important tools are web page. It means that Claude Code can call fetch tool for a link and fetch its content from web. So you can send docs, for example, to Claude Code, and it will fetch content from these docs. And you don't need to copy the content of documentation and paste it into the prompt. The same with web search. If you ask Claude Code to find some information or find some tutorial about how to integrate two different frameworks, it can do for you and use this information later for creating plan of your implementation. There are other tools that are also used by Claude Code. You can just study them and ask this question yourself. And you can do it for any coding agent. For example, you can ask Codex what tools are available and also see how it's doing its job. Now, I also promised you to show the system prompt of Claude Code. We can do this by asking Claude Code as well. I ask Claude, what are your instructions? Save to instructions.md. You can see that it decided to summarize instructions instead of providing like full instructions, but still you can see a lot of useful information here. It is identified as Claude Code, Anthropic official CLI for Claude. It has knowledge cutoff May 2025. It means that, by the way, everything happens after this. It doesn't know any events or any libraries, any versions of libraries. It has some tone requirements, some objectivity. It doesn't provide any time estimates and other things about tool usage, for example. So it has instructions on how to use these tools to interact with files. Also some security instructions here. So you can see that this is a pretty solid instruction and it can give you understanding of how it works. So what we have at the end? We have system prompt, we have a number of tools, and we have user and assistant messages. They are alternating after each other. And what does it mean for us as people who use coding agents in our work or in our personal projects? First, it means that coding agent doesn't know anything about your code base at all. So you just run it in a folder, you ask some request, and then it finds all the files it needs to find. It decides what your architecture is, etc., etc. So it doesn't know that at all. So it's a good practice to first have your instructions written in claude.md or agents.md, save there your architecture, coding styles, maybe some important practices you wanted to follow, because again, it doesn't know that. Also, it doesn't know all your helper functions or how you want your code to be organized. For example, if you have some functions to interact with your database in a specific folder, it might just not find these functions and it will decide to generate its own functions. And your responsibility as a developer, as a user, to make sure that it follows your practice, not its own practice. So you need to tag these files and folders in your prompts and just help it to find files, find functions it needs to find. We also know that LLMs has knowledge cutoff, and this is explicitly written in the system instruction. And this means that if you work with some new version of a library or something happened after the date of knowledge cutoff, this is again your responsibility to help manage context properly, maybe send some link and it will use this fetch tool, or you can ask it to do web search for you, but still you need to think about that, and you can't completely blindly trust agent in this case. In what cases you can trust the agent? Well, I think when you wanted to do some atomic, very small piece of work and you write a very reasonable prompt. For example, you write a prompt including all the files, all the folders it needs to follow. You include some links to documentation and you say, hey, in this file, I want you to write this function that does this and this. So when you write this detailed instructions, then it will follow it better, and usually like it's very good at writing code in that way. In this case, you are still responsible for the architecture and for the output, but you can just save your time in writing the code itself. This was all I wanted to share today. Please write in the comments if you have any other questions about how coding agents work. We'll try to answer them in our next videos. Thank you very much for watching. Hope that was useful, and subscribe to the channel. We release new videos every week, and see you next time.